Fae is the newest EA Originals project to be released. It's part of EA's new incentive to fund and release more indie-like projects from smaller studios, like Coldwood Studios' recent Unravel in 2016. Fae, on the other hand, is made by Zoink Games and is all about working together to save a world you love. Get ready for a very artsy single-player adventure. Much like other artsy single-player driven games before it, Fae's story is told through interpretive gameplay. No text or spoken dialogue is shown that gives you a direct story. Think 2012's Journey on PlayStation platforms, for example. Instead, the story is told through the actions and the gameplay as you control a small little creature in this world that's slowly being taken apart by evil creatures known as the Silent Ones. The Silent Ones are capturing all of the wildlife in the forest and are dissolving your once beautiful home. The fox-like figure that you play as isn't a tough guy by any means. It doesn't fight at all. Instead, it sings, and that's what you end up doing through a lot of this game. Fae's main character sings at different pitches to help communicate and break the language barrier between different animals of this world. As you form and establish bonds with these animals, you'll work together, each of them bringing a new ability to the table that'll help stop the Silent Ones from destroying the peaceful forest. As you open up paths with the help of your new friends, you begin to unravel and understand the secrets and mysteries behind the forest and the Silent Ones. Fae offered an interesting story with themes of nature and sustainability with a cute mute cast of characters. Although it didn't leave me with an emotional impact like Journey did, it was still an amusing time. Fae is an action-adventure game with a hint of Metroidvania elements thrown into the pot. Our little fox-like friend is dropped into this semi-large forest filled with animals and plants of different shapes and sizes. Each living thing has its own unique language, or rather a song, that it uses to communicate. The little creature we play as has to learn the correct songs to communicate with these living things, which in return aid him on unlocking previously blocked paths that progress the story. The start of the game doesn't really give you a lot of direction. It's a bold choice because if the general sense of direction is wrong, the game can quickly go from cute and artsy to rather frustrating. Personally, the intro of the game had me at the edge of frustration at times due to in part the performance issues I experienced, which I'll dive into during the visual section of this review. Anyway, the game wants to give you the sense of loss and curiosity to encourage you to take your time and explore the forest. If you do get lost, there's a map that gives you a general look at your surroundings. You can also start to sing to have birds sort of guide you in the correct direction. As you explore the world, you'll sing to animals and gain temporary powers that opens up new paths. Singing to the creatures is done by holding down the trigger button on your controller and using the gyroscope to find the correct pitch for the song, which is indicated with a slight vibration on the controller. Permanent powers are unlocked by collecting pink crystals scattered throughout the world, usually on the paths that are unlocked by the temporary powers. These crystals are then submitted to the great tree of the forest that gives you new powers like being able to climb trees, which in itself opens up the size of the world. Ultimately, the game boils down to befriending new animals that leads you to crystals that will unlock more permanent powers and thus open up the forest for you to explore. With all that said, the creature you play as never really becomes a fighting creature. When encountering the Silent Ones, you're stealthily avoiding them or going around them. This also opens up to more platform-heavy gameplay. At times the platforming was fine, but it could also definitely become more frustrating when performance issues would hit or just the general art style of the game got in the way. Having the environment have such a dark tone to it along with the character you control can get a bit confusing. Luckily, the cumbersome gameplay was kept to a minimum and wasn't too prominent in the game, with mostly focusing on exploration and grid platforming. I had a very mixed performance across the multiple platforms that Fae is on. I played on Nintendo Switch and PS4 and the differences were pretty apparent. In terms of resolution, the game runs at 720p on the Switch, 1080p on the PS4, 1260p on the PS4 Pro, and then native 4K on the Xbox One X. The game targets 30 frames per second but comes across some stutters when entering larger open areas, and it's more significant on the Nintendo Switch version. Doing pan arounds while platforming in larger open areas made the game chug very hard to the point where I didn't want to move too dramatically so the frame rate could stabilize. The issue can be found on PS4 Pro and Xbox One X too, but it's more subtle and less jarring. Going back to the Nintendo Switch version, when in portable mode the game renders in what looks like 720p, possibly slightly lower. The performance in portable mode is much better than in dock mode. You still get the occasional frame rate drop, but it's much more stable in performance. As for the general visuals of the game, I enjoyed the very ambient neon light looking visuals on display. I thought that the art aesthetic was beautiful at first glance. Generally, the game adopts a black and purple color hue where our main character is black and the rest of the environment is a shade of a solid color, typically black, purple, or blue. When standing still, it can look quite beautiful, like a forest met Tron Legacy. But in practice, when trying to platform intricate environments, it can be quite a pain and enraging when the punishment is being sent down a long mountainous path that you just spend a solid amount of time climbing. The music in Fe is eerie yet lovely. It's always playing with a sense of awe as you explore the world. Imagine the tune that plays in your head when you gaze upon an open mountain plain when you go hiking. That's the best way I can capture the essence of this soundtrack. There's a lot of elongated notes playing in somewhat high pitches in the background that at times sync up to what you're doing on screen. The strings and chimes dance beautifully to the neon-like environment. As for the sound design, a lot of the sound that comes from platforming mixes in well with the music, almost feeling like part of the song itself. The creatures you interact with, on the other hand, give off these cute little roars that sound like tiny creatures. It makes the larger deer-like creatures sound like tiny mice. It's really cute though, and it fits with the game well. Fe is a game that aims to tell a beautiful and emotional story about a forest being invaded by evil creatures. The hero of this problem is but a small-like creature that's more adorable than tough. It's definitely touching and rather emotional in the moments where you have to see your animal friend creatures be captured by the Silent Ones, though I never felt the impact I felt with something like Journey. As for the gameplay, the 4 to 5 hour journey was entertaining for the most part, offering a heavy platforming adventure with some hints of Metroidvania. At times, the platforming could get a bit cumbersome because of the visuals blending in too much or the performance being a bit rough, especially when playing the Nintendo Switch version in dock mode. Overall, though, I thought that Fe was a moderately touching experience that, though it probably won't live up to the emotional expectations that some have set for it, is still a journey worth going on if you can get it on sale. Though a bit of a warning, if you have the option to play this on higher end hardware, then I would choose that over the portability of the Switch. That's of course if you have a choice in platform or don't mind primarily playing this game in portable mode if you pick up the Switch version. That does it for my review of Fe for the Nintendo Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. If you have any questions about the game or future review requests, please leave them in the comments down below. You can also reach me over on Twitter, Instagram, or my Discord, which are all active and linked in the description down below. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.